Baltic Otfar wasn't the only Inquisitor who worked hard after the success of the first Damocles conclave. Maria Brangan achieved much within the year and a half between the end of the conclave and capture of the Seeker, an event which would cause all Inquisitors to meet once again on Agrellan. As someone close to the machine faith, Maria Brangan had special interest in Tau Tech heresy. She kept contact with Otfar, receiving pieces of Xenos technology to be studied and catalogued as evidence to be presented before members of Adeptus Mechanicus. She established her own network of informants and smugglers, although nothing close to the scale of Wayfinder Pact, which took her by surprise and created a new appreciation of the Radical Inquisitor. Her focus was concentrated on securing more favors with the Mechanicus as a whole to make the gathering of important members of this organization so much quicker. As such, unlike Otfar, she spent much of her time far from Damocles sector, seeking leads and helping servants of the Machine God to hunt down tech heretics and secure certain artifacts for them. All in the name of ensuring that when she would call for a meeting, the servants of the Omnissiah would answer. It was only after an operation on Garus, where Otfar secured important intel and pieces of Tau technology, that Brangan could finally act. Her fellow Inquisitor secured much of Tau technology and Xenos bodies to ensure that tech priests would listen. With secured evidence of abominable intelligence created by the Tau, as well as proof of their advanced technology, she contacted local Forge Worlds and Adeptus Mechanicus at large, hoping for a meeting. She was relatively confident. Her agents managed to secure a handful of artifacts, and she herself helped with hunting down a heretic cult that recently formed in the region. She hoped that with those accomplishments fresh in minds of the tech priests, she would get a chance to speak with representatives of local Forge Worlds. To even her own surprise, it was Mars itself that was first to answer her call. Data gathered on the Tau and their allies turned out to be of great interest to the Machine Cult. Soon after, another 6 Forge Worlds established contact and agreed to joint meeting. The first two to answer after Mars were Tigrus and Euphratus, a sibling Forge Worlds located to the galactic north of Damocles sector. Those forges were well known for their exceptionally close ties, despite how different they were from one another. Tigrus was the older sibling, a world that fell to the Orc invasion and was under Greenskin's control for over 1,000 years before being recaptured. Tigrus was more measured and cautious in their actions, as rash decisions led to the loss of their homeworld long ago. Despite that, when the decision is made, they prefer to act quickly and decisively. Their Titan Legion, Solaria, Imperial Hunters, is known to use a great number of Warhound Titans. Tech priests of this forge mirror their Legio. They prefer deep planning, but when plan is made, they strike fast and hard, using speed, mobility, and overwhelming firepower. Euphrates is the young sibling, full of energy and enthusiasm. It is noted that their tech priests are optimists, have their own elaborate and confusing sense of humor, and love for music. It is also noted that Euphratus overall likes to cooperate with non-mechanicus forces on greater scale than many other Forge worlds. If there is someone in need of help, tech priests of Euphratus are usually there to help. In fact, when Tigris was occupied by the orcs, it was on Euphratus where tech priests of Tigris found new home, and from which main counteroffensive and reconquest of their world was launched. This explains close relations between the forges, and that Tigris was infected with Euphratus' sense of humor. Their titan Legio is Legio Cantorum, Steel Singers. The name is apt, as titans of a Legio are known to sing on their own volition, either in battle or during rest. Some say that humor and love of music of the Forge came from their titans. Legio Cantorum usually deploys smaller numbers of heavy-hitting titans that focus on long-range firepower. As one could suspect, Legio Solaria and Legio Cantorum are seen as brotherly legios, who almost always deploy on the same battlefield, side by side. Brandgan was more than happy when she heard those two forges wanted to meet with her. They were extremely important suppliers of arms and had close ties with multiple Astartes chapters nearby. She didn't have time to fully digest that information when another forge contacted her. Silver Ark is unusual Forge world, as it's not a world but enormous ancient Ark Mechanicus, massive even by Mechanicus standards. Silver Ark is a mobile forge. Their homeworld lost eons ago. The Silver Ark flies through the void, establishing so-called Silver Harbors that operate as small outposts and mini forge worlds. Currently, the Ark is located near the Dovar system, where it supports local economy and production. Priests of the Silver Ark are known to be unorthodox. They are known for reverse engineering Xenos technology, and there are even whispers that they attempt innovation. Even fewer know that Ark is very closely connected to Archmagos Belisarius Cole, and their members share many ideas of this enigmatic figure. Brandgan herself knew of Cole from whispers only. The Ark lacks a Titan Legio, but they do have a Night House on board. Ebony Serpents are a large house that serves the Ark since the start of their nomadic journey. Legends say that original Forge World and Night World that were their homes were lost in a single catastrophe, and since then, both were living as nomads. Ebony Serpents are known to have many unusual knights models and even more unusual weaponry. They also operate some truly ancient machines that were scavenged by the servants of the Ark. The support of this unorthodox forge was to be expected. They were the closest forge to the Damocles sector and known border of the Tau Empire. In fact, Brandgan was surprised that Ark contacted her with such delay, but she put that to the nature of astropathic communications. Next forge to contact her was complete opposite of a silver arc. Forge World Anuaris is located within the realm of Ultramar. This Forge World is relatively standard for the Mechanicus, not counting animosity towards Forge World Connor that is in the region. Anuaris, despite being in the realm of Ultramar, keeps very close ties with Mars and keeps to their creeds and rules. While old, Anuaris lacks their own legio, but they do have an allied knight house of Ferum Victrix. The Forge World is known for its iron will and decisiveness, in the vision of grinding their enemies into dust during brutal sieges. If there are fortresses to be broken, Anuaris specializes their Skitari and allied knights in dealing with just that. Support from realm of Ultramar was unexpected. They were on the opposite side of the Damocles sector, and there were no sightings of a Tau in the region. The next forge to contact her was one of the major ones. Forge World of Akatran is a forge world of power and destruction. They faced the rage of the orcs many times and prevailed again and again. Their Legio Destructor, represents the power of a forge. They can support one of the largest legios in the Imperium, that count over 100 god machines. They produce their own variants of weapons and are main suppliers for Elysian drop troops. Akatran are like their Legio, destroyers and beasts of steel. They crush their enemies with overwhelming firepower and numbers. They are a force of righteous obliteration, and there are few enemies who dare to attempt to slow them down. Last Forge World to answer Brangan's call was one she didn't expect. One of the most famous and respected Forge Worlds in the Imperium. Metallica itself answered the call. A Forge World that is said to be older than the Imperium itself. Its production outshines almost any other in the Segmentum, and numerous worlds, especially that of Armageddon, are reliant on their power. Metallica is ancient, powerful, and proud. On this meeting, outside of representatives from Mars, it's Metallica who holds the most influence and power. They have not only Legio Metallica, the Iron Skulls, who existed before the Imperium and are veterans of a great heresy, but also House Raven, that is one of the largest in the entire Imperium, counting hundreds of machines who serve both the Machine God and the Emperor. Metallica is a powerhouse, a symbol, and a sign that Brangan's foundings got more attention than she could ever expect, especially when it was decided that the meeting will happen on Metallica itself, and that Fabricator General of Metallica himself, Belisarius Frex, will be overseeing the meeting between the members of the priesthood and Inquisition. Brangan didn't waste time and flew to Metallica with utmost speed. She arrived just in time, warp currents being kind to her and other delegates. Fabricator General Belisarius Frex was a hulking figure, looking more similar to a crab rather than a human. His white and red robes kept clean despite the pollution of his world. He was known for being gruff and having little patience for debate. You couldn't discuss things when action had to be taken. He had long experience fighting orcs, which probably led to his decisive nature and no-nonsense attitude. Archmagos Dominus Balthazar Kali Delta of Mars was an interesting figure, as he was still very much humanoid in shape, yet made entirely of some kind of black metal. His small figure hid advanced and ancient technology. His standard crimson robes are engraved with silver and golden thread that hid codes and riddles. Compared to Belisarius Frex, Balthazar was prideful and full of riddles or extremely specific tech jargon. He wasn't happy with delegating even a shred of authority to anyone other than himself. Archmagos Dominus Tyrion Voxis of Tigris was a machine of war. Covered in white and green robes, he was a mobile war platform. Probably the best armed of all members of the meeting. Despite his armaments, he was humble, reflecting Tigris' history of loss and reclamation. He displayed unyielding will and spoke with clear intentions. He has conservative and careful approach, preferring to keep things simple and efficient. Archmagos Explorator Ixa Ventis of Euphratus was an opposite of Voxis. She has small, nimble figure, her body made for mobility and agility. Her robes that of silver and azure. She has a magnificent staff, adorned with digital displays. She was enthusiastic and curious, always seeking new avenues of improvement and adaptation, even towards the Xenos tech. She and Voxis have a mutual respect for one another, despite the difference in their approach and personality. Archmagos Primus Cadius Vorlan of Anuraris was a tall, imposing figure covered with red and gold robes. His frame is that of absolute utilitarian approach. Not one part was a decoration, no part is for show. Each and every piece of that figure has its purpose. He was a traditionalist to a core and Mars loyalist. He sees any deviation from tradition as heretical, which made him the exemplar of Puritan among gathered priests. Archmagos Strategos Valer Korvat of Akatran was a reflection of his homeworld. His frame one of salvaged parts and repurposed weapons, marked with scars and burns from battle. His green and black robes mirroring the dark and military nature of his home. Korvat was a pragmatic, resourceful, focused on survival above all else. He was master logistician after gaining much experience after fighting the orcs. Though he isn't as dogmatic as others, Korvat understands the need for discipline and order in war. Lastly, Archmagos Explorator Zetra Solari of the Silver Ark. She was awe-inspiring and unusual sight, even by mechanical standards. Her form was a blend of experimental bionics and advanced technologies, many of which have no clear origin within Imperial records. She wears a magnificent silver robe that is seemingly made of some kind xeno material. Her mechadendrites are sleek and hyper-articulated. Additionally, instead of walking, she floats above the ground on a personal anti-grav engine. She mixes passion of discovery with a cold, clinical detachment when it comes to ethical concerns. She is a pragmatic leader, more focused on pursuit of knowledge than tradition. She is viewed with suspicion or even hostility by more conservative members of Adeptus Mechanicus. Though few know it, she admires Belisarius' Cole, and more than once she acted as his emissary. Maria Brandgan might be an Inquisitor and representative of a Golden Throne itself, but even she felt uncertainty when walking into the room where 7 high-ranking tech priests awaited her. Some of them were allies, some rivals, some even accused each other of tech heresy or blindly following orthodox traditions. Thankfully for her, Fabricator General of Metallica and representative of Mars agreed on one thing already. She will be given chance to present all of Inquisitorial findings in full, before each member of the meeting will be given a chance to ask questions for details and discuss the information between each other before the talk about how to respond to the Tau Empire would even begin. Brandgan agreed, and for the next 5 day and night cycles, Archmagos listened, asked questions, and discussed details between each other. The Inquisitor couldn't answer all questions. And while Cadius Vorlan of Anuaris was first to criticize the Inquisition, Mars and Metallica agreed once more on something. They approved Inquisition careful actions with regard to keeping Imperial operations secret. A quick vote, 6-1, silenced Cadius for quite some time as other priests continued discussing Inquisitorial findings. The fact that Metallica and Mars, who were old rivals, agreed on anything at all proven to Brandgan that they were taking the threat of a Tau seriously enough to promote caution rather than rash action. The fact that Brandgan delivered actual physical pieces of Tau technology and Xenos bodies as well was appreciated, the tech priests looking through data and rechecking it themselves if they wanted. On the 6th day, the discussion regarding Adeptus Mechanicus' answer to Tau Empire's threat began, and that was where arguments started. Archmagos Primus Cadius Vorlan of Anuaris immediately called for total eradication of the Xenos Empire. To focus Mechanicus resources, to eliminate them completely. He saw them as a threat not only to the Imperium, but the purity of a machine cult. Archmagos Strategos Valer Korvat of Akatran saw them just as another enemy to outlast. But rather than overwhelming attack, he was of the opinion that slow and systematic attrition warfare with smaller amount of resources spent in any given moment was the more efficient way to deal with them. Archmagos Dominus Tyrion Voxis of Tigrus saw them more as simply an interesting enemy, one that should be defeated, maybe even destroyed, but for the most part used as a testing ground for new strategies and weaponry. The nature of the Xenos Empire was secondary to the potential for weapon development to him. Archmagus Dominus Balthazar Kali Delta of Mars, on the other hand, saw the Tau as a nuisance, but one that could offer insight into certain technological advancements. He didn't state it openly, but he saw the fact that these Tau united so many Abhuman and human tribes as very interesting. For those tribes could have preserved some pieces of technology from before the Age of Strife. Even if tainted by the Xenos, it was still human technology that belonged to Mechanicus by right, and should be recovered. Fabricator General Belisarius Frex of Metallica preferred overwhelming and devastating strike at the Tau. Not to destroy them, but beat them into submission. Force them to become one of hundreds, if not thousands, of minor Xenos threats that hide between the stars. He quietly admired their efficiency, yet this was overshadowed by his pure hatred of their alien nature. He believed that human technology tainted by the Xenos could be salvaged and brought back into the fold. Fold of Metallica specifically, rather than Mechanicus or Mars. Archmagus Explorator Ixia Ventis of Euphratus was fascinated by the Tau technology and advocated for containment of those Xenos for the sake of study and observation. Seeing technological advancement and adaptation of ancient human or non-Tau tech into a united system was inspiring, and something Mechanicus could use for their advantage. She was of the opinion that eradication of the Tau Empire would be a wasteful and time-consuming endeavor, and a series of smaller campaigns to contain them would be more efficient. Archmagus Explorator Zentra Solari of the Silver Ark saw the Tau as intriguing challenge, a way to unlock new technologies for the Imperium if studied and harnessed properly. She proposed a dual approach: internal sabotage of a Tau political structure and study and reverse engineering of their technology. She called for greater support for Inquisition and deployment of Mechanicus' own specialized infiltration and sabotage units alongside them to weaken the Tau Empire before any plans of the proper invasion or containment were to be even discussed. And while all of them had quite different ideas how to solve the problem, all agreed that Tau Empire's expansion had to be stopped, and the Tau themselves taught a lesson to not take over Imperial worlds. After long discussion, it was determined that, based on existing data, total extermination of the Tau was unfeasible or simply too costly if it was to happen in short amount of time. Even optimistic projections showed that total annihilation of the Tau could last as much as 150 years. Less optimistic ones stretched to over a millennium. The Xenos Commonwealth had too many unknown technologies and species for the Mechanicus to create a clear image of potential futures. Proposition of immediate attack was stopped with a vote 5-2, with Cadius Vorlan and Valier Korvat preferring to act now rather than later. It was then when Brangan fully revealed the concept of a One Crusade to the gathered priests. more than a half declared it as an unrealistic and foolish approach. The Tau, by all accounts, were an enemy that would require at least 2 crusades, in most optimistic projections. First, to break their empire, and second, to clear out remnants. However, all of them agreed to support an imperial crusade and begin preparations in regard to weapon production and gathering of forces. All forges, except Mars, promised to deploy their machines of war, including Night Houses and Titans. Mars decided that its contribution will be official support for the crusade among the High Lords of Terra, which should speed up the preparations and relocation of supplies for the coming conflict. The crusade itself was far off, and by all accounts, some mortal would be crowned as War Master. Most tech priests saw their opinion of how to approach the Tau threat as irrelevant to current discussion. They will present their vision to a War Master when one will be chosen to lead the forces of the Imperium. And besides, no War Master would refuse the support of a Forge World, even if Mechanicus forces would act on their own to accomplish goals of their forges. Tech priests returned to their homeworlds, planning for war and how to secure the most from this conflict for their own forges. Maria Brandgan returned to her vessel, feeling as if she was blessed by the Emperor himself. Support of 7 Forge Worlds was more than she could ever hope for, and with support of Metallica at that. She knew that some of the declarations won't materialize, or that the number of Knights or Titans will be smaller than one could have hoped, but it mattered little. The Crusade will have Knights and Titans. Multiple legios and houses would join the fight. Even at such short notice, those forges could secure much in terms of supplies. The Tau Empire, for all their unity and size, couldn't match the power of the Omnissiah's faithful. Just as she was congratulating herself, an astropathic message reached her. Otfar secured an ethereal, no less, and one that was alive. He was calling all members of the conclave to meet once again, merely over a year and a half after the first conclave, in order to discuss their findings and accomplishments. Maria Brandgan wouldn't arrive in shame. She achieved nothing less than overwhelming success. 7 Forge Worlds were interested in the Crusade. Not everyone had as much of success as Otfar and Brandgan, however. 1.5 years between the first and second conclave was hard for Antarine Arain. She intended to fly to Shrine World of Valoria straight away, but her agents called for her support in regard to heretical activity on Hive World of Nexus that required her immediate attention. She arrived to witness entire Nexus domain, Nexus Hive World, Tartarus Penal Colony, Cetarus Mining World, and Aurofa Agri World consumed by sudden rebellion. It was confusing, as it was coordinated alliance between workers wanting to abolish nobility, prisoners who wanted freedom, overworked agri serfs and a coup attempt by a nobility of one of the hives to take over the entire realm. Arain noticed strange heretical cults and separatist movements within Nexus realm, but by all accounts, they were minor in nature. They did point towards incompetence of a ruling dynasty which she intended to deal with, but not coordinated rebellion movement. Nexus realm was a powerhouse in the region, and losing it was not an option. Arain took her place on War Council, helping reorganize loyalists and call for reinforcements. As she operated within the War Council, she realized that Governor of Nexus Realm, Arcadius Valen, wasn't incompetent, nor dim-witted. He wasn't even cruel by Imperium standards. He kept his realm stable and productive for over 3 centuries. Her agents found no proof of heresy or weakness within him, nor majority of people who stood by his side. The PDF forces were containing the threat as of now, but the local guard regiments were growing restless. Arain gave a word to mobilize them fully in order to crush the rebellion swiftly. It was then that forces of Alpha Legion revealed themselves en masse through the realm. They stood behind the destabilization of the entire region. They were behind creation of a dozen of minor cults that united in singular goal of ripping apart Nexus realm. The threat became suddenly greater than expected. Loyal regiments of the guard were fully mobilized. Hive World of Nexus provided both Rust Guard raised from underhives as well as Nexus Crystal Guard from common people and nobility. On Tartarus, Penal Legion of Blaze Riders were given a chance for redemption if they showed their devotion. Cetaro's Stone Guard mobilized in force to crush rebelling miners. Hawk Shooters of Aurota were deployed into endangered areas, showing how they got their name. And while those regiments were nothing to scoff at, they were unable to fully contain the Alpha Legion, that managed to turn some of them traitor, causing even more chaos and disorder. Arain coordinated well with the governor, who proved his skill again and again under pressure, despite the fact that Alpha Legion was seemingly running circles around them. And when the war was at an impasse, and there was no guarantee which side would score a victory, reinforcements arrived. A slightly oversized company of Star Executioners and 2 commanderies of Daughters of Strife, worth around 400 battle sisters, arrived in system. The Astartes chapter and Order of Sororitas, who acted like siblings to one another, were a great boon for the Inquisitor. They arrived in force. Astartes strike cruiser locating hidden Alpha Legion equivalent and leading local naval forces on a chase before forcing it to escape the system. Around 20 Marines were delegated as advisors and trainers to local guard regiments, when the rest were split into strike forces supported by battle sisters. It was then that Alpha Legion revealed that they smuggled a great number of mutants and true chaos cultists onto the worlds, who started attempting to summon demons onto the Imperial planets. Arain coordinated with Space Marines, Sisters of Battle and local loyalists in breaking the rebellion on all 4 worlds and hunting down Alpha Legionaries. The period of active combat took around 7 months. Cleanup lasted another 3, with Arain making sure that every spot of corruption was purged completely. She was more than dissatisfied with escape of a great number of Alpha Legionaries by unknown means, although she wasn't sure of their true numbers. Some reports indicated that as many as 300 of them were present. A more optimistic counted them as only 50 strong. At the end, with all the fighting, only 21 bodies were recovered, with another 40 being assumed to be killed but recovered by the enemy or destroyed beyond the point of leaving the proof of their existence. Star Executioners left around 40 Marines in the realm, offering their services as military advisors and trainers for local guard regiments. Daughters of Strife left similar number of their sisterhood to establish a small monastery on the Hive World. Governor Arcadius Valen, of course, welcomed them with open arms, sending good deal of resources to the chapter and order both, as a sign of his appreciation and respect. Antarin had a chance to speak with a company captain and Canoness Preceptor of both forces before their departure. She spoke of a Tau and potential of a crusade in the future. Both commanders promised to carry this message to their superiors, but didn't promise any real support. And no wonder, they weren't in a position to give them. Arain at least gave them a good impression, so when the time came and she spread the war message, they should listen to her. It was in the last days of the cleanup that her agents discovered data that Valora, the shrine world she wanted to visit in the first place, was to be the next target of the Alpha Legion. She rushed there with utmost speed and arrived just in time. Something was brewing in certain regions of the world. Radical cults of the Emperor were getting rowdy. She made contact with Esau Gurney, the Cardinal of the world, presenting evidence of upcoming disaster. The Cardinal gave her his blessing and called for local forces of Order of the Bloody Rose to support local guard regiments in purging the heretics before they could act as united force. The cleansing of Valora was swift and brutal. Few agents of the Alpha Legions were found, interrogated, and eliminated, thanks to her actions. Forces of the Traitor Legion didn't appear on the planet, clearly seeing that they lost the game before it even started. Antarin got thanks of a Cardinal who saw purity of her hatred and called her a paragon of faith and true exemplar of Inquisition. Using this newfound appreciation, she spoke with the Cardinal about the Tau. He listened to her, but didn't make any movements just yet. He asked for more data on those Xenos and the scale of their threat. With Alpha Legion present in the region, he was of the opinion that focusing on some minor Xenos threat could be a mistake. Arain reluctantly agreed and was about to contact Otfar when he contacted her. Otfar not only had a mountain of evidence, he had a live ethereal in his custody. Arain, although achieved much in this period, she achieved almost nothing in terms of organizing the crusade. She whispered news of the Tau Empire into some ears, but they were focused on a perceived, bigger threat. Now, however, with more evidence, they would listen to her. She was sure about it. And so, she left Valora and made her way to Agrillan to take part in the second Damocles conclave.